Okay, so in this objective, we're going to determine if two lines are perpendicular or parallel given the equations of the lines. So they're going to give you two equations, and they're just going to ask you to tell if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So let's remember what we learned the other day about parallel lines. If two lines are parallel, they have the same slope. If you have two equations with the same slope, then you know the lines are parallel. With perpendicular lines, they have negative reciprocal slopes. So remember, negative, we're just going to change the sign. Reciprocal, we're going to take the fraction and we're going to flip it over. All right, so let's do a couple of examples. Number 1. Determine whether the graphs of the two equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So we're going to look at these two equations. Now, when you're showing your work, if you're doing your work on a separate piece of paper, it's always a great idea to write down what you're doing so that when you look back at it later, it makes sense to you. So I'm going to copy down this equation. Y equals negative 2x plus 4. This one is already in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. For this kind of problem, all I'm really worried about is the m. What does the slope equal in this case? It's negative 2. So the slope of that equation is just negative 2. That's simple. And then we'll look at the next one. Y equals negative 2x plus 1. And again, this one's already in y equals mx plus b form, so we know that the slope of this line, y equals mx plus b, so the m, or the slope value, is, again, negative 2. Since both of these lines have the same exact slope, negative 2, we know that these lines are parallel. So you're going to want to choose, for this one, answer choice A. If you're doing your work online or if you're doing your work in a notebook, good idea to mark what answer you want to choose when you're scoring your work. Okay, number 2. Determine whether the graphs of the two equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Same thing. Again, we have these equations. This one is y equals 7x minus 6. So I know that the slope is just going to be 7. That's the coefficient of x. The other equation is y equals negative 1/7 x minus 1. So again, already in slope-intercept form, the slope of this equation is negative 1/7. And when I look at these two slopes, I have 7 and I have negative 1/7. So are they the same? Definitely not. Are they negative reciprocals of each other? Well, this one's positive, that one's negative. So far, so good. And then we have 7. Remember that you could imagine that as 7 over 1. So if we were to take the reciprocal of 7 over 1, it becomes 1 over 7. That means that, yes, they are negative reciprocal slopes. So that makes these two equations perpendicular to each other, meaning that they form a right angle. So remember that this one is positive, it's heading uphill. This one is negative, it's heading downhill. That's a good start. And then this one has a rise of 7, a run of 1. This one has a rise of 1 and a run of 7. That's what makes these perpendicular slopes. All right, the last example, number 3, same thing, but this time we have two equations that are not in y equals mx plus b form. So it's not that simple to just look at it and figure out what the slope is. We're going to have to do a little bit of algebra to put these into y equals mx plus b form, and then we'll be able to quickly find the slope. So remember, we want to solve for y. So I'm going to just subtract 3x from each side. So now I have y equals negative 3x plus 6. So that means I have a slope of -3. And then let's look at the other equation. Again, it's in standard form, so we're going to have to do some algebra to transform it into slope-intercept form. X minus 3y equals -8. So we'll subtract x. Remember, the whole goal is to get y by itself. And cross those out. Now I have -3y equals, I'm going to put my x term first, and then the constant equals -x minus 8. Might be easiest right now, actually, to just go ahead and multiply everything by a negative. Since everything was negative, this would make it a little bit simpler. We'll get 3y equals x plus 8. And now we can just divide everything by 3. So y equals x divided by 3. That's really a 1x divided by 3. So that would give me 1/3 of x plus, I have +8 divided by +3. That's going to give me +8/3. Now, some of you want to jump ahead and say, oh, I've got denominators. Let me multiply everything by 3 to get rid of them. Well, that would take us right back to this equation right here. Remember, our goal was to solve for y, or to get y by itself. We're done. What we wanted to find out was what the slope is. Now that we have it in slope-intercept form, we can look right here, and we know the slope is going to be 1/3. So now we compare these two slopes. I had -3, and I have +1/3. Negative, positive. Okay, they're negatives of each other. This one technically is 3/1, and this one is 1/3. So they are negative reciprocals. That makes them perpendicular. The slopes are going in completely opposite directions, so they will form right angles to each other. And that means we would want to choose choice B.